Good evening, Bermuda, and welcome to the fourth episode of Education Connection. As we continue to evolve education in Bermuda, we are going to discuss design thinking and signature learning programs with Learning First tonight. There are exciting things happening for our students, and we really want your support. So I look forward to this episode and the engagement that it's going to foster. There will be time for questions, so you can place your questions in the comment boxes on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to the Minister of Education, the Honorable Diallo Rabin, so that he can start our discussion for the evening.
Thank you, Alicia, and welcome everyone. This is our fourth installment of Education Connection. And tonight, I am happy to continue the conversation that we began with the last episode about signature learning programs that will be introduced at Cedar Bridge Academy and the Barclay Institute in September 2022. Tonight, I am joined by a member of the Learning First team, Karen Capel. Karen is from our Transformation Partner Organization Innovation Unit, who along with her colleagues have been on this journey with us since March 2020. Before we get into the specifics of today, testing and learning about how the signature programs will work, I want to remind viewers about the broader education reform agenda. The goal of our education reform is to enable each and every young person to lead personally and professionally, compete locally, and contribute globally. To meet those goals, three things are being worked on simultaneously. Structurally, moving from a three-tier to a two-tier system. This means phasing out of middle school and the introduction of parish primary schools and signature senior schools. An education authority is being established as a non-political body to ensure schools best support young people to reach their full potential. The third piece of the puzzle is Learning First, which is what this group is representing. Learning First is a program of work that supports schools, parents, and the wider community to redesign the parts of education that need to change in order to make it authentically Bermudian. These changes will be adopted by parish primary schools and signature schools over the next 5 years plus, and will inform how the education system operates to ensure those changes happen. Now let's focus on signature learning and signature schooling. The main idea behind signature schools is to give students the opportunity to spend a significant part of their time in school following their passions, building on their talents, and developing the skills, knowledge, and relationships needed to achieve their career, further education, and life aspirations. Signature schools will have a core curriculum that students will be expected to complete, and give them the foundational knowledge and skills needed to compete locally and globally. They will also offer signature learning programs, which will be selected by the young person according to their interests and ambitions. The signature learning program will offer 1. A range of modules with relevant academic subjects. 2. Appropriate practical skills training. 3. Individual and group projects in real-world issues and challenges. 4. Internships and meaningful work placement. And finally, effective guidance on career and further education with relevant accreditation. As we previously shared, the signature learning programs at Cedar Bridge Academy will be STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, and the trades and professions. The signature learning programs at the Barclay Institute will be health and social care, and finance, financial and insurance services. Over the past month, school transformation teams have been working hard to develop new blueprints and pathways for how young people will engage in the new signature learning program. It is this work that has been the basis of prototyping and testing over the next month or so. Today, Karen is going to talk with us about the change and transformation methodology we've adopted and let you know how you can be involved in this exciting and critically important part of the process. We will then open the opportunity for you, our Bermudian community, to ask questions and hopefully secure your commitment to get involved in the process moving forward. And with that said, I'll hand it over to you, Karen. Karen, I think you're on mute.
Here we go. Is that better? Thanks, Minister. Thank you very much for the opportunity to have Learning First present with you today, Education Connection. It's great to have the unfolding story of Learning First being able to be told. I'm sharing my screen, but I can't see it up just now, so I'm wondering whether Alicia might need to activate. There we go, perfect, thank you. So I'm going to give an incredibly brief introduction to, or just a few opening remarks about the change methodology that the government has adopted for the education reform agenda, and that is co-design. And you might hear that word a lot. Minister, you yourself use it in your speeches, but what does it really mean? Co-design is a movement, it's a mindset really, and it's a set of methods that we use to adopt the kind of changes that you all want to see for Bermudian young people. Co-design uses creative and really participatory processes, so it is incredibly collaborative. And as the name suggests, it is informed by the design-led processes and design methodology. And the reason why we use co-design, or we collaboratively are designing an improved school system for Bermuda, is because co-design seeks to change those previously held power structures and imbalances through building new relationships, through building capability and capacity for boundless curiosity right across the system. We're using methods of inclusive convening, really, to share knowledge and power. And that's allowing us to surface the amazing talents and assets and capabilities that people have inside the school system and outside of it, to hear their perspectives and to meaningfully partner with each other to do better together. Co-design is underpinned by a robust methodology. We often see the final product of design. We see a beautifully designed building, or we see a techie gadget or a time-saving device. But what you don't see is the process that sits behind it, that it takes to create these things that people love and people use every day. So the design is a process that enables us to deeply understand people's needs, create things to make people's lives better. And at the heart of this isn't a magic formula that can be learned overnight. It's a mindset and an approach that enables us to continually create better and different things. And the double diamonds, the two diamonds that you can see on the screen, that conveys an evidence-based design process, where the two diamonds represent the process of continually opening up and exploring issues more widely or deeply. So the opening up part of the diamond, divergent thinking, and then taking focused action, where the diamonds close down, or convergent thinking. The first diamond, the stimulate diamond, helps us to understand people's needs rather than making assumptions about what the problems might be or what people would like to see done differently in the public schooling system. So it has involved us speaking to and spending time with people who are affected by the issues. So we've begun this work by listening, by hearing, by trying to even more deeply understand a whole range of different stakeholders. But I'm sure the viewers of Education Connection might suggest some other people for us to engage on this front as well. Those insights that are gathered from that user research help us to define the challenge in new and interesting ways, so we get really clear on what our problem is. The second diamond enables us to, or encourages us to give different answers to that clearly defined problem. We seek inspiration from elsewhere, and then we co-design with a range of different people. And we call that ideas generation process ideation. And actually, sometimes it's not as hard as what people think. Lots of good ideas come from colliding other ideas together. An example we like to use is when those responsible for creating the movie Alien were pitching to funders and to movie studios that they didn't have a super sophisticated pitch. They didn't build models of what the movie might look like. They simply talked to people about Alien being Jaws in space, the collision of two things that were already very popular with the community. So coming up with lots of different ideas gives us the right ingredients to pick from and choose from, so that we can make sure that we're being really transformative and really radical. So we like to aim for wild ideas, the ideas at the top of the hill, because it's much easier to roll them down the hill to make them more suitable, more appropriate, more deliverable in the public schooling system than it is to try and push the safe ideas up the hill. And the final part of the process, the part that we're up to now and where we really need everyone across Bermuda to get involved with us, involves testing out these different ideas, these different solutions at a small scale, rejecting the ones that you don't think will work and that we can't make work, and improving the ones that will. And that process is called prototyping. So prototyping helps us to make ideas seem real so that we can find out more about how they will work. They allow us to fail earlier and more often so that we can succeed sooner. And you might be wondering, why is there a vacuum cleaner on the screen when we're talking about the Bermuda public school system? Well, one of the best examples of failing earlier and often in order to succeed sooner is the Dyson vacuum. James Dyson produced 5,000 prototypes of his vacuum cleaner before it went to market. So bringing those ideas to life, making those prototypes, participating in prototypes is one of the most exciting and fun parts of the design process. We get our hands dirty, we make, we try, we test, and we are definitely focused on learning throughout that process. Making our ideas real is the best way to test them. An idea might sound great on paper, but bringing it to life enables us, and getting people to interact with it, to use it, to put it to the test really, is the way that we can show how something will work. And most of all, prototyping now allows us to generate new ideas. It's a creative and generative process. But we need you. We need the public. We need citizens of Bermuda to do this with us. We shouldn't do this without the Bermudian community getting involved. So the purpose of the prototypes that we have developed is to collaboratively test the features of the new signature learning programs that will be on offer at Cedar Bridge Academy and the Barclay Institute in September 2022. So we want to test the features that we've developed to date so that we can together refine them and improve them. In the prototyping sessions, members of the school transformation team, and as a reminder, you met some of them a fortnight ago if you tuned in then, they're teachers, school leaders, parents, community members, industry partners. They're people from the non-government sector. There's a whole range of people that are involved in developing, have been involved in developing these prototypes. And we'll work together so that you can explore and experience what the signature learning programs might look like in practice, so that we can learn from you about how to make them more desirable, more feasible, more viable, more impactful. And so we've set up opportunities for the Bermudian public to get involved in the prototyping process. In the week beginning on the 15th of November, we would love for you to get involved and to seize the opportunity, as the screen says now. There's a link that's up on the screen, and that's going to be shown in the banners as well throughout the rest of this episode. But in that week, beginning the 15th of November, at Cedar Bridge Academy, on behalf of both senior schools, we will be engaging in prototyping, and we would love for you to be involved. And there's a whole range of times and ways that you can do that. We will, on different days, focus on different signature learning programs. So if you're a representative of the science community in Bermuda, then you might like to come to the STEM prototyping sessions, or you might like to go to the health and social care. If you are part of the construction industry, then you might want to get involved in the prototyping of trades and professions. But as you can see, we have them both throughout the day and in the evenings as well, because we know people are busy. But if you're a parent or a guardian, a young person who's just left school and has some ideas about how to make schooling better, if you represent one of the sectors that our signatures relate to, a business leader, you're a community member, you're someone who's interested in the future for Bermuda's young people, then we just strongly implore you, encourage you to get involved. And through that process, that you can help us collaboratively design an improved school system for Bermuda. We've been asked a couple of questions so far. What do I need to bring? And the answer is, or do I need to have a specific set of experience or expertise? And the answer is really no. What we would love for you to have is the kind of mindset, the attitude that we need to get involved in some of these complex challenges and offer up new solutions and bring your creative self to that. And we've been asked another set of questions about how we're going to do this in a COVID-safe way. And I just want to, say trust us, rest assured that the Learning First team has been liaising really closely with the Department of Health to be able to offer these prototyping opportunities in a face-to-face way that are abiding by COVID-safe protocols. So if you register to participate in one of the prototypes, then you'll be sent an email with both the details of where it is and the times, but also how we're going to meet those COVID protocols and how to access the kind of testing that you might need. So my final slide is really just a thanks for the opportunity, and hope we've got some questions. And also just on the slide right now are a range of ways that if you can't participate in the prototyping, you might like to get involved in Learning First more broadly through the social channels that operate and the other forums that have been established to take people's involvement. So with that, Minister, I will throw back to you.
Thank you, Karen. That was quite a bit of information in a short span. I do hope that the people that are out there watching, are getting interested, especially with the prototyping that will be taking place. I know we've worked tremendously hard to be able to put something in place that allows us to get together, because that is a critical part of moving our education system forward and looking at these various signature programs. I know you mentioned it in your statement just ever so briefly, but the same things that we're doing now with the senior schools, we will be doing with the parish primary schools as well, because it's critically important for us to have that input from the public. So we are creating something that is not only uniquely Bermudian, but something that you've had input in. So you actually know you'll be able to give your thoughts and how we move forward. I think, Karen, when we reflect on when we were developing the signatures, and everyone said you need to have an entrepreneur signature. You need to have an entrepreneur signature, and it was part of the signatures. We've now pared them down to 10 signatures, and for those that do not know, they are what we mentioned today: the STEM signature, the trades and professions signature, the financial and insurance services, and the health and social care. But other signatures are actually these climate, environment, and resources, community and social investment, arts and culture. We always hear of quite a few things about that. Education services, so we can build those educators, build educators for our system to come back and join us with that. Hospitality and tourism, another one that we hear about all the time. But originally, entrepreneurship was there as well. And so, just to prove how we are intent of listening, or not to prove, but to make an example of how we are intent of listening and using the general public input to help us develop that, it was decided based on the input that came from Mr. and Mrs. Bermuda that entrepreneurship should be part of the curriculum from primary school all the way through senior school. So instead of being just a signature that they get more in depth where they are introduced to it at the senior level, it is something that we plan to have within our curriculum all the way from primary through. And so that is what happens when you have this collaboration and you're developing a system that is for the country that you're developing in. So for that, when you mentioned about the prototyping and how important it was, I thought I would mention how we are actually taking these things very seriously when we're talking to people and getting them to really sit down and talk to us. But Karen, there's a couple of questions that I did want to ask, and of course, the general public is free to. You can ask your questions whether you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. Please just ask your questions, and it will pop up to us. But Karen, I wanted to know, one of the questions or challenges that I've been asked as I talk about the co-designing and prototyping is, are we experimenting with our children's lives?
Thanks, Minister. It's a question we get asked a lot as well. Why take such an experimental approach and engage in the process of co-design. And truth be told, prototyping and co-design is used in many, many different settings around the world. Some that are really high risk, in fact. So if you think about military strategy, and you think about the war games that are created, the simulations that are created, that is a form of prototyping. Before any army or military service enters a theatre of war, they do war testing, they do war games, and they test out their strategies. That's a form of prototyping. In fact, one of the best examples is when you think about urban designers and you think about the amazing cities that are built on such a small scale to work out how that's going to work, how the community will interact with a new urban design. That's a form of prototyping. So it's not experimentation and us wanting young people to fail. It's experimentation so that we can fail in the kind of ideas that we have and not be so attached to our ideas regardless of the impact that they're going to have on young people. So that's the form of experimentation that we're up for.
Thank you, Karen. I see there's a question here from Miss Feroz. In order to have a truly cultural Cultural relevant curriculum. Will resources such as books be created to represent an authentic Bermudian society? Now, before you jump into that, Karen, I do want to talk. I do want to mention that we had also talked about the Progressive Labor Party had also talked about. There's been much discussion around the introduction of Bermudian, quote unquote, authentic Bermudian history within our system. And I can say in relation to this that there has a process has started with the Department of Education on what that research could look like and how we could produce an authentically Bermudian history book and taking into account all of the things and such that need to go into a program such as that. So I did want to mention that process had started from my perspective. But Karen, I'm not sure if there's anything else that you could add to that.
So I think the process of co-design is really one where we are privileging what is authentically Bermudian. In fact, we want to be inspired by best practice globally, but we need it to absolutely be locally relevant and meaningful for young people and for teachers alike here. So one of the design principles that underpins Learning First and underpins education reform more broadly is one that is for Bermuda. So I've just looked this up quickly. I'm going to read it out because I think it speaks to the question. Restorative learning that values our past, recognises our current challenges and opportunities, and prepares learners to thrive and lead in Bermuda's future. So if that means more locally relevant and authentic text, yes. If that means revision of the history curriculum, like the Minna just talked to, then yes. But what that means is still being determined. But for Bermuda is one of the guiding principles for this work.
Thank you, Karen. And that kind of actually leads into our next question that we had because we've talked about this thing co-design, and what it means. But there are several people that always when I first became minister, I believe I probably got the same videos from what's happening in Switzerland, what's happening in Singapore, and all sorts of different places. And people would always ask, okay, why don't we just look at those high performing quote unquote high performing countries like Singapore or Finland and just roll out what they have, what they're doing there here in Bermuda. And I always would respond is what you're seeing is what's happening in the classroom. What you're also not seeing is the cultural phenomenon that actually is propping up what is happening in those particular countries. And so when I say that and we talk about co-design, I just wondered if you could just delve a little bit deeper into co-design and how that involves utilizing the people that are on the ground and the cultures that are on the ground to help us move forward.
Thanks, Minister. So the short answer from me is because Bermuda is not Finland and it's not Singapore and it's not Australia either. So co-design is absolutely imperative for the kind of sustainable and sustained change that Bermuda seeks for the future of young people. We use a framework, we use a helpful framework to think about this, and we call it the 3 fields of knowledge. So yes, of course, there is what is known, the public knowledge, the evidence-based. Think about academic journals that are peer-reviewed, gold standard, randomised controlled trials about practices that work. That's really important. It's incredibly important that we know that and that informs what we do. But it's equally as important as what we know, what the teachers and leaders, what parents want for the future of their young people, what society wants from education, the purpose of learning and schooling. And when we put those 2 things together, what we get is new knowledge. That's the 3rd field of knowledge, is new knowledge. And that helps us to be both, as I said before, inspired by and competitive with kind of global aspirations and informed by what works, but locally relevant and meaningful for Bermudians. And that's always my answer. It's not as easy as adopting and rolling something out. We actually have to make it. We have to make it fit and work for Bermuda.
I know, and it just reminds me when we talk about creating. We've always said, and you can go back and look at many clips of me saying we are here to create something authentically Bermudian that's by Bermuda for Bermuda, and who knows, there'll be there. Who knows that? I anticipate that there'll be countries similar in size that would say, "Hey, what are they doing in Bermuda?" And let's try and copy that. That's where we want to be. We don't want to just
Mm.
take someone else's plans. While we can learn from them, we don't want to just remove it and drop it here and then try and shoehorn it into shoehorn it into what Bermuda needs. Thank and Karen, thank you for that answer. This one is just very simple, and I just want you to just go into what kinds of things we'll be prototyping, so people can really get a better understanding of what we mean when we say prototyping.
Sure thing. So it's exactly what the school transformation teams have been working on. And a fortnight ago in Education Connection, 4 members of those transformation teams shared with Bermuda the very high level concepts of those, and we got some really helpful, some kind, helpful, and specific feedback that's been able to help us develop those, to develop the inquiries that are guiding our prototyping. So during the next round, we're using that information. We also tested out the concepts with teachers, with young people, with parents, with a whole range of people through the Bermuda Union of Teachers Days. They're our partners and let us talk to their members. And that helped us to establish a whole series of lines of inquiry, a whole series of questions that still need to be answered. And that's really what we're working on this week. But it's, some of them are emerging and are really clear that we need to solve for them. So if people are really excited about the opportunity for young people to do real world learning in business, in industry, to apply their knowledge in meaningful real world problems, if we want to do that, how might we partner with businesses and community to provide the environments and spaces that are most conducive to learning outside of school? We need to solve for that. It's more than work experience. It's more than day release. It's where meaningful learning takes place with adults that aren't always classroom teachers. So we need to work out how to make that work. How might families play an active role in supporting learners through their signature learning? So how do we increase choice and agency and voice of both young people and families, so they're not passive recipients of the schooling system, but they're active partners in it? So we're going to be testing out different models of making that work. Or for a signature learning program like financial and insurance services, how do we keep our teachers up to date with the latest knowledge and thinking around something like fintech? How do they stay abreast of contemporary corporate or industry knowledge on this? So the way that we go about testing those things out is by creating role plays, simulations, bringing the models that we've developed on paper to life, and getting the real people that would be actors in those things when they're rolled out. We get them to be a part of it, and they tell us what it feels like and what the experience is. I heard a few weeks ago now a Bermudian framing or phrase. Someone else told me it was Jamaican, so I'm not quite sure, but what you can't hear, you must feel. And they were telling me that when they were talking about disciplining their children, I think. But actually, it's the perfect analogy for prototyping, Minister, because everyone's an expert on schooling. Everyone went to school. Everyone has a lived experience of it. Everyone knows what they think schooling should look like. And it's really hard to shift people's mental models of that. So we can't shift people's mental models by just telling them what it could be like, or creating websites or pamphlets marketing the 4 signature learning programs. We have to create the kinds of opportunities for people to feel it, for people to experience what these new types of and models of learning might look like. And that's what prototyping does. It gives us an opportunity to do that.
Okay. Thank you for that, Karen. Another question that has come from one of our viewers, and it says, theory and practice goes hand in hand in teaching and learning processes. In view of this, what percentage of theory will be weighted, and what percentage will be weighted when coming up with summative assessments?
So this is the kind of question that we'll be answering over the next month. So we'll obviously reach out to the person who's asking the question to make sure that they're a part of our prototype. So the weighting will be different, is the honest answer, because in some of our trades and professions signature learning programs, application of knowledge is critical, and in others there is more knowledge, there is more academic knowledge that is required before you get to that point. So So it's not going to be the same, and it's not going to be the same across the signature learning programs. But I think there are some guiding principles to that. You know, we're not saying that young people should be out and experiencing the world of work without having the necessary knowledge that they need. So that does require teaching. That does require the kind of direct and explicit instruction that teachers are brilliant at. It's not about letting young people flounder without the underpinning and necessary knowledge that they need, that they require in order to do that. Assessment is a really big part of the signature learning programs, and our thinking about what that could look like, because the current model of assessment, not just here in Bermuda, but the kind of ability to retain facts and information and be able to present that back, is not what the world is asking for. It's not what employers are asking for. It's not the kind of skill that young people need, not the only skill that young people need to thrive in life. So how do people demonstrate their knowledge? How do young people build portfolios? How do young people get micro or mini credentials along the way and not wait to graduation in order to have a piece of paper? How do they get competency and industry-based credentials along the way? So these are some of the big kind of leverage points that we're exploring through the assessment part of this work, and we'd love everyone who's interested in assessment to get involved in this, because as you can imagine, there are people that are at both ends of both extremes of this, and people that are in the middle. So thanks for the question.
And thank you, Karen, for that prolonged answer. It really is important for persons to ask and persons to get involved, so they can ask those questions. I look forward to. I hope that young lady that has asking the questions is plans to sign up for some of the prototyping sessions, because I think it sounds like she has a really good keen interest in education and can probably be of an asset for sure.
Absolutely.
Karen, what perceived or actual barriers do you anticipate with the signature learning programs, and how can we resolve these perceived barriers?
So to be perfectly honest, most people have been spotting opportunities, things to connect to and to build to, and to make the signature learning programs even better. So that's incredibly encouraging, is the positive response. But we'd be naive to think that there aren't going to be some hurdles and some hiccups along the way. So a couple that we have been thinking about are how do we change the perception of the community about the purpose of education? So when we talk to teachers and school leaders, they get lots of questions about, homework and the 3 R's and why can't we get back to basics? But so how do we change the hearts and minds of, you called them Mr. and Mrs. Bermuda earlier, Minister, so I'll use that framing. How do we change the hearts and minds of people to understand that it's both that deep and rigorous academic knowledge that people need, but also those transferable 21st century skills that we know are absolutely critical for thriving in life as well as in the world of work. And one of the things that's unhelpful is that people create a false dichotomy. So people think it's one or the other, but the truth is our young people need all of those things and more. So I think one of the barriers that we face is winning over the hearts and minds of Bermuda about the kind of transformation that's required, and opportunities to speak to Bermuda in this forum. And I know that you do lots of radio and any opportunity that you can, but we know that we need to engage more and more people in this work. And the other one for me that continues to pop up is around how do we engage the business and community, governments, agencies, not-for-profit organisations, anyone who's an employer really, and get them more up for being involved in young people's learning. I said before, it's more than work experience; it's more than day release. How do we shift it so that everyone who's in those roles is actually partly responsible, sharing the responsibility for growing and developing the amazing talent and passions and interests that we have of young Bermudians here. So we need to collaboratively develop the kind of amazing real-world learning experiences that our young people need. We are we think Bermuda is the most amazing learning environment, a learning ecosystem like no other. We always describe it as one big classroom, really, because of the things that young people have at their fingertips here. So how do we win over the employers across Bermuda to get involved in signature learning programs as well? Ministers, I think is another potential barrier, and that's why we would love as many of them as we can to get involved in the prototyping.
Well, I know what I can what I've seen, and especially when I make the impromptu visits to these these sessions that we are running is I'm just encouraged by the amount of the business sector that is actually stepping up and giving of their time and energy to help us develop what's going on. People, I think people, once if they come and they get involved in this, they would be very encouraged and in some cases surprised of the people
Mm-hmm.
who are are actually approaching us to say, hey, I would like to be involved. I mean, I don't want to call anyone out, but I've referred them to Learning First, as you would know. It's like, hey, I had a conversation. I just happened to have a conversation with this company. They want to know how they can get involved. I had a
Mm.
conversation with this company, and we were talking about something else. But they said, hey, tell me about the signature program. They said, and like, well, we think we can help with that. How can we get involved? And so people are interested in this, and people understand that a successful public school system is the backbone of any country.
Mm.
And that is because the public school system is the only comprehensive education system in any country. And this is not a knock on our private schools, but essentially they are private because they have more stricter requirements in terms of the types of students that come to those schools. Whereas public school, and when we say comprehensive, everybody can come, no matter what it is, what your passion is, what your learning ability might be, what difficulties you might have in certain subjects. Everyone comes, and we are required, and we do a very good job of figuring out how we can ensure that they get a solid educational experience within our school system. Our school system, when compared with others, I mean, you look at we have ASD programs, we have programs for hard of hearing, programs of visually impaired, programs for children that in the what we call the functional academic arena, functional skills arena, and we also have programs for children for what we call alternative programs for children that may need a little more extra support than you would in a normal classroom setting. And so, and we cannot forget our the teachers that are doing a great job down at the Dame Marjorie Hope Academy. And those are schools, and that is a school for children with severe exceptionality. And so, it's incredibly important to me to ensure that we are doing all that we can to make sure that our children get an education experience that they deserve out of our public school system. I see we have another question here and this is coming from the public. It says, it would be great for community members who did not have a positive school experience to be involved so we can learn from some things that may have been improved, that may have improved their experience. And two, also, since our students currently can transition seamlessly to overseas universities and colleges, will the new programs continue to afford that seamless transition, i.e., be Bermudian but familiar enough with those institutions?
So maybe I'll start with question number 2, actually. And
Yeah.
really, we started with the end in mind. And the end in mind was that we had to be able to open up even more pathways and opportunities and possibilities for young people. So what currently happens now has to be the minimum. But what are the other pathways to accelerate people into the future world of work to further study? And that includes overseas institutions, colleges and universities. So absolutely is the answer to that.
Mm-hmm.
And the first one is incredibly interesting question to me, because when I talked about the kind of methodology that sits behind co-design and doing that user research first, we started with the extremes. We started with people for whom the Bermuda public school system had failed. And we started with the people for whom they had had huge amounts of success being a Bermuda public school system student. And that meant that we talked to people that were in youth justice and people that were in correctional facilities, and our design team members, in fact, teach in those settings, and so they talk to young people on our behalf. And you absolutely, the viewer was absolutely right that we have to think about the full gamut of young people and what their experiences have been, so that we can not recreate some of the mistakes of the past. Is the very honest reflection about that. And we heard some things that were difficult to hear, I think, is how I respond to that. But we have an opportunity to design, to do better and different together. And I think that's what those kinds of conversations open up for us.
And I just want to just add to that, because I've been in sessions as well, and we do hear people talk about the trauma they went through with the last time we did major education reform, and we are keen not to make those same mistakes. And this is why you have heard myself, including the premier and those that support, and the government is supportive of education reform. It is not going as fast as some people would like, but we will measure once, twice, 3, 4, 5 times, as many times as we need to measure before we cut, because our children cannot afford for us to get this wrong. And so I will stand by that statement. Yeah, and you've heard me say in the past, education is about generations, not elections, and we have to get this right for generations, regardless of anything else that other people may want to bring up from time to time out there. But Karen, I see we're getting to the top of the hour, and and this is where we kind of end our show. But I did want to have an opportunity to ask you one more question, and hopefully we can just have a brief answer. Is well, what are the people you work with? What do they get excited by when we talk about transformation of our school system in this method?
So the answer for me is that they're genuinely excited about the future for young people in Bermuda. I haven't met anyone here yet who doesn't want an even better future for all Bermuda's children and young people, and that's what motivates them, that's what drives them, and that's what has them coming back and giving up their time over and over in order to create that. So that's what excites the Minister.
Yeah, and let's talk about that giving up their time, because people are volunteering for this, and they're not, and there's a bit of work that goes into some of what we're doing, and we are grateful for the people because they care and because they want to see an improved education system, and they see what we are looking to do and how we're doing it, and have fully fed into that they happily volunteer their time. And if anything from today's episode, I want people to know that we're looking for you. The Signature School pop-up, your sign up URL is at the bottom. Type that into your browser, sign up. And we might not be able to use you for this, but we can use you for other things as well. So because I know with these pop-ups, where with COVID protocols, we're limited to the amount of people, but we rather have too many than too little when it comes to this. And trust me, we do call you back and use people for all sorts of things. Become part of our movement forward, and I guarantee you that you will see what we're trying to do and getting to the success. But with that, Karen, I know we've reached the top of the hour and we used up our 45 minutes. So with that, I will call back on our host, Ms. Trott, to wrap us up.
Yes, thank you so much for the information shared tonight. It was a great bit of information. I hope that Bermudians do get involved. The pop-up is going to be amazing. Learning First will be on our next episode of Education Connection, episode 5. That's going to be on November 18th at 6:15. So we'll get to speak with them, as well as students and members that participated in the prototyping sessions. So just looking forward to keeping Bermuda connected as we continue to evolve. So you're going to be seeing a lot more of Learning First, the signatures, and then the parish primary schools. As a parent, I'm super excited. Like, I feel that I might be even, living vicariously through my son. And then I have another son coming through. But this is really exciting for Bermuda. So I'm glad that it's open for Bermudians to partake. And I hope that people take advantage of that. Oftentimes you can get that pushback that people feel they weren't consulted or they didn't have a space at the table. But This is an open invitation. We want as much involvement as we can get. Be sure to visit learningfirstbda.com. You can subscribe to their mailing list, receive those updates. Be sure to follow the ministry on our socials so that you know whenever we're doing any type of programming, because we want Bermuda to stay informed and stay influential. So, with all of that said, thank you, Bermuda, for tuning in, and have a great night.
Thank you, Bermuda.